Hi, this is Joe Rebelo with Rebello's Kempo Karate. And in this month's episode, we're going to be focusing on yet another art that we teach in the auspices of Rebello's Kempo Karate, the art of Jiu-Jitsu. Now again, Jiu-Jitsu and its Chinese forerunner, Chin-Na, means to grab, seize, hold, control, and subdue. Jiu-Jitsu is a reference to the gentle art, the Japanese orientation of the grappling arts. Way back when in Japan, before there was karate and different orientations, an overall term that was used for empty-handed arts was Jiu-Jitsu, which involved punching and striking and blocking and kicking, also throwing, grappling, ground techniques. It was quite diversified. For you, the general public, or you who are involved in martial arts, many of you, when you think of Jiu-Jitsu, you probably think of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when it involved ground techniques and the choking and strangulation. Those indeed are part of the Jiu-Jitsu curriculum, but they're really not everything to Jiu-Jitsu. Today, what we'll focus on is what the Japanese call tachiwaza, which is standing techniques, standing Jiu-Jitsu, different ways to grab, hold, seize, lock, control, subdue, and manipulate an opponent while on your feet. Assisting me today will be Mr. Andrew Novick. Mr. Novick is one of my students, not only in Jiu-Jitsu, but also in Kempo Karate for many years. And we're going to go over some of the various elements and aspects regarding the art of Jiu-Jitsu. Andy, right? We're going to go Japanese today. Again, we're going to be focusing, first of all, on some of the basic understandings of Jiu-Jitsu. When we deal with Jiu-Jitsu, we have three basic types of techniques that we're going to utilize. Either you compress a joint or limb, extend or hyperextend the limb, or twist it until it locks. Now, let us say we're going to take a basic rudimentary attack. And again, in Jiu-Jitsu, you start off with a basic foundation attack, and then you learn how to utilize the same technique against a multitude of attacks. In this case, let us say that I'm going to utilize a direct wrist grab, meaning I'm going to take my hand, which is closest to him limb, and I'm going to grab it like so. Now, the first aspect about Jiu-Jitsu when someone grabs you is simply stated to escape. So the four basic escapes we learned, he's going to do an upward escape. He's simply going to bring his hand up like he's brushing his hair. He can also do an outward escape, like he's turning his hand to look upon a mirror and then turn out to chop. He can then do an inward escape where he brings his hand out like he's waving hello and then turns and closes the door, chopping in. Now, he can also do a downward escape. A circular downward is he'll bring his arm around like he's checking his watch, roll, and disengage me from there. Or if his hand's up and I grab him like so, he simply brings his hand directly down in a straight line against the web of my hand where my index and thumb meet. Now, from there, each particular escape also has a re-grabbing action. Oh, and of course, if he did it with his right hand, he can do it with his left. An upward escape, an outward escape, an inward escape, and a downward circular escape. And if his hand is up, a downward linear escape. Each particular escaping action can then be compounded with a re-grabbing action, meaning he not only does he want to escape my grip, but he wants to grab me in response. So now, as I reach across, he's going to bring his hand up and re-grab. That is an upward re-grab. If he wants to do an outward re-grab, he brings his hand across as he did previously. Now as he turns his hand, he now re-grabs my limb. An inward re-grab, he would bring his hand outward and then come across utilizing the eagle's wing to the eagle's claw. And then he can do a circular downward action where he utilizes his thumb, rolls, and grabs me like so. Or if his hand is up, simply rolling straight down and re-grabbing using that same web that we talked about. Now, Andy made a small motion to show that the same escapes can also be done from a cross wrist grab. And we're going to go over that in a moment. Again, so I'm going to grab this limb and the same actions occur. Upward re-grab, outward re-grab, inward re-grab, and circular downward, and linear downward. Of course, we can do it with either limb, or we can do it with both. Again, re-grabbing, outward, re-grabbing, inward, re-grabbing. Wow, look what we have there. That's part of what the Japanese call koppo, bone-breaking techniques, where you drive one extremity into the other. Of course, you don't hit him with yours, you hit him with his. And then, of course, downward, coming around, rolling in. Not the most comfortable position for myself. Or if his hands are up and I go to grab his arms like so, moving downward. Now, many times you may look at these actions and say, well, you know, no one's ever grabbed me by the wrist. You know, I'll never forget, I had one student who was a very macho, very dynamic individual. He was playing darts, and a friend of his wanted him to come over and see something or play pool with him, whatever. And he's like, come on over. It's like, no, man, I'm playing darts. And he's like, no, come on over. It's like, and suddenly he went, come on. And his eyes widened, and as he came back, he said instantly he dropped into the technique that we had taught him that night. And he was in a state of shock. He said, you know, I never thought anyone would grab me. And that very night, it occurred. Also, for our female viewers, again, it's a state fact that a man will attack a woman differently than he will attack a man. A man is more prone to grab a woman by the wrist and say, hey, you're coming with me. So these particular escapes can be very applicable in our day-to-day events as a dissuasion tactic. Again, the person grabs me, hey, just leave me alone. I don't want any problems. Just a simple way, creating distance, escaping from the grab. You haven't punched him, you haven't kicked him, you haven't done anything to damage him. You're simply saying to the person, hey, just leave me alone. Now, if we take those basic concepts, then we take them and we go into 4 major techniques. Now, we have 4 basic techniques that we teach in Jiu-Jitsu as a foundation. And they are known as wrist flexes and arm bars. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to utilize another type of tack to give you an insight into these various types of techniques. And what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to do a lapel grab. Now, this is something one man is more prone to do to another than a man to a woman. But a person that will reach out, grab the front of your shirt, and then, I'm going to knock you out, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And then he goes into whatever technique he wants to from that point. And that first technique Andy just demonstrated is called an outside wrist flex. Some people refer to it as a wrist lock. In the Japanese, some people refer to it as kote gaishi, a gayashi, or twisting lock to the wrist, kote. So he's going to reach up, he's going to grab, and he's going to peel. He's going to push-pull. And he's going to bring me into a compression action. And we're talking about compressions, extensions, and twisting locks. He could, at this point, simply compress my joint directly against my elbow, boom, and that breaks my balance. If he does it hard enough, he can drop me directly to the ground. Or he can simply twist it in a circular fashion to the point where the limb locks. Now again, you may sit there and say to yourself, but Mr. Rebelo, Sensei, you know, the arm's bent, it's not locked. In this case, the skeletal structure is locked. I mean, if he continues, the rest of my body's going to go, and he's going to throw me right to the ground. An easy way for you to understand as a viewer, what I'd like you to do is just as you're sitting there at home, just do a simple thing. Bring your hand up, look at the palm of your hand, see where your thumb's pointing, keep your hand moving to that direction. And as you do, you're going to see that your body's going to yield, and again, your structure, your skeletal structure is locked. You're locked there, even though your elbow is bent. Now, if he does this with his right side, then obviously he can do it with his left. He grabs, he peels, he pushes, and peels like so. Now, could he compound it with his other hand, as we showed you earlier, and make this a wrist compression and drop me straight down to the ground? Yes, he could. Could he, if he so chose to, take it, twist it, turn it, take his other hand, and throw me? And he went to another technique, which we'll talk about in a moment. Well, maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. But again, he's going to grab here, he's going to peel, he's going to match it with his other hand, and he's going to twist, and there I go. Now,